Hello again, this is the 11th of July 2024, and this is not an Orty Thoughty, this is a Floaty Votey. It's a week from the election now, so if I leave this any longer, it's no longer going to be topical. I don't talk a lot about political stuff on here, which I sort of feel like I ought to do more. It's a very big part of my life and who I am. It's a very big interest of mine. The news and current events and what people think and so on. For background information, I am a sort of wokey, snowflakey, loony lefty, whatever they're calling us these days. So if that offends you, this is not your safe space. And my constituency is the safest of Labour seats. So ultimately, I'm not sort of bound by any kind of tactical voting or anything like that. I'm just looking for a party that I feel sort of most reflects my views. And I'm going to go through a few things that I was thinking about in the run-up to the election, and some things that have happened since, maybe, that my opinions on such things. Obviously we know now that it was a Labour victory, which I wouldn't say I'm unhappy about. It was going to happen. It was foretold in the polls long before it happened. Although apparently, you see a lot of statistics after elections, don't you? There's a lot of charts flying around all over the place. Apparently the Labour's vote share has not changed significantly since the days of Jeremy Corbyn. But the Tory vote has just absolutely collapsed. I cannot imagine why this happened. In fact, I'm really puzzled actually how they lasted this long, and how it was 20% in the end of the electorate was still voting for them. I know some people kind of live in a bit of a bubble and just read certain newspapers that support a certain viewpoint, and they vote a certain way because their parents always did or whatever, and don't really pay attention to current events. But still 20%. And I'm still crying over the 2019 election, to be honest. I just thought that was an absolute travesty. The phrase that was going around is, "Oh yes, I like a lot of what Corbyn's saying, but he just doesn't look statesman-like, does he? He doesn't look the part. You can't imagine him going to and talking to the G7. You wouldn't be proud of him as your prime minister, should you?" And we got Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson. We don't want a little old man with a beard being our prime minister. It should be someone who looks like a haystack and sounds like the soup dragon. And then the other one that was going around is, I like a lot of what Corbyn's saying, but he doesn't have a clear position on Europe. So they just split the left vote and let the Tories in again. Did you see the Labour manifesto in 2019? It was like a dream come true. They're going to nationalise everything. They're going to, undo all the austerity cuts. Oh no, the world economy has collapsed. What shall we do? Oh, let's take away all the supports for unemployed people and all the services to help drug addicts and sex workers and mentally ill people and the homeless. Let's just not help anybody ever at all. Let's spend absolutely nothing on public services or on infrastructure for a decade. Yeah, that'll help. I mean, I'm not an economist, but I can see a flaw in that plan. And then um, the current Labour Party, the current manifesto, has just swept all that aside. You know, they seem to not care anymore about any of that. It was so pedestrian, you know, so unimaginative. I mean, there were one or two things in it that, you know, were good. Yeah, they were talking about, you know, converting to green energy and yeah, they were still talking about, you know, stopping the boats, but you know, the small print was saying, well, we're going to sort of engage in some international diplomacy to kind of try and ensure that, you know, there aren't so many refugees in the world, and you know, deal with you know, criminal gangs that are exploiting illegal immigrants and so on. And okay, fair enough. But all the really exciting things that, you know, the party were making their policies when Corbyn was in charge were just done away with. And I just felt like, what is this party for? You know, their only selling point really is, we're not Tories. I think that is quite a common feeling, actually. I mean, okay, in the first week in power, they've already, you know, stopped the you know, the deportations to Rwanda, and they've already announced they're planning to nationalise the railways. Okay, we can cope with that. But yeah, there's really not a lot that's inspiring in there. I mean, there's they're still debating whether or not to remove the two-child benefit cap. They're debating whether or not children of large families should be disadvantaged simply because their parents chose, for whatever reason, had more than two children. That's still up for debate. And, you know, it's things like that sort of make me feel like, you know, what are they actually going to be any better long term? I mean, manifesto is as manifesto does, I know that, but it is, you know, the only kind of insight you can have before a party are in power into what they stand for, you know, what their core message is, what is the general feel of, you know, the aura around this group of people that you are lending your vote to. Yeah, and Labour was just, well, they're not Tories, so yeah, they'll do. I mean, yeah, they'll do. They'll probably be better than the last lot, you know. I mean, this is a sort of running theme, certainly for, you know, as long as I've been kind of politically aware. You know, Tories wreck everything, Labour turn up and sort of fix some of it and kind of improve things here and there and start a few promising schemes off, and then the Tories come in again and wreck it all. So it's about as positive as I can hope for, really. And there are some individuals in the Labour Party that are, well, and I know it's dangerous to say you like a politician or that you have a lot of respect for them, because they always have to try to walk this very fine line between their public image and what they really want to do, what they're able to do. People like Angela Rayner and Zara Sultana and Diane Abbott and so on. I think they're kind of, well, let's say they have a positive approval rating from me personally, if they care about that kind of thing, which they probably don't. And I was a Labour supporter during the Corbyn years. Well, I was a Corbyn supporter. Let's put it that way. I was a Corbyn supporter. I actually went to see him speak once. It was doing a speech in Sheffield. I went along to see him, stood in the crowd, And the thing that struck me about him was he was tiny. He was minuscule. Really, really little. Couldn't believe how tiny he was. And I thought, God, he's not only the best Prime Minister we never had, he's like the shortest Prime Minister we never had. Which is completely irrelevant to anything, but yeah, that's what... Well, it's not the only thing that struck me about the event, of course, but yeah, he was minuscule. Yeah, it was really hard to find much of a fault with anything that he was coming out with, obviously, but it's just so little. I found it quite distracting. Anyway, moving on. Sorry, I got that was completely irrelevant. The Reform Party. I think we probably owe the Reform Party a certain debt of gratitude, to be honest. For splitting the right vote. Everyone who was kind of disillusioned with the Tories sort of moved to them. And they only got 5 seats. So they're still an irrelevance, really. Ultimately, then, the Nigel Farage party, aren't they? I mean, they were nowhere before Nigel Farage sort of came creeping out of the woodwork again to lead them. I think I've got no respect for him as as a politician. I can't think of a single thing he's ever said that was remotely helpful to anybody ever. But what he is good at, what he's an absolute genius at, is his public image. He's a celebrity politician, isn't he? He knows exactly who he is aiming at and what they want to hear. And if you read the Reform Manifesto, it reads like the things that are said by a certain section of the population. Let's just call them the gammon, the gammonati. That's what the Reform Manifesto is. It's send all the boats back. They literally wanted to deal with the crisis in the English Channel by sending the boats back to France. There was no detail about how they would kind of clear this with the French government or anything like that. Do you mind taking all these refugees that we can't be asked to look after anymore? That aren't our problem. Do you mind taking them off our hands? Yeah, you can have them. France, yeah, you like that kind of thing, don't you, France? I don't know what the thinking behind that was, other than well, they don't like immigrants. Let's say we'll get rid of all the immigrants. They want to bring immigration down to net zero. How's that going to work? And I think the most sinister thing was actually something that, you know, you didn't hear them talking about very much, but I don't know how much, you know, that the voters actually knew about this or agreed with this. Their policy on gender identity. It actually says in their manifesto that they want to make it illegal for teachers to tell children that there are more than two genders. Not just take it off the curriculum, they want to make it illegal for teachers to tell children that there are more than two genders. They want a whole generation growing up just not having gender explained to them beyond there are men and there are women. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. How dystopian that is. Who is that policy aimed at? Who does it help? What problems does it solve? And in terms of vote share, this party was the third biggest in the country. I mean, they only managed to get 5 seats, yes. But in terms of percentage of voters, you know, they came second in a lot of constituencies, you know. That's pretty scary, right? That's scary. I mean, I think the world at the moment is a very dangerous place for transgender people. Maybe, you know, as it's become more acceptable to be gay, you know, the people who, you know, are terrified of anything not particularly heteronormative have had to find a new target. I don't know. Maybe it's just because, you know, they were sort of becoming a bit too visible and, you know, the right to want to put them back in their cage. I don't know what it is, but it's an obsession for far too many people, this hating of trans people. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to be transgender. I have no idea why it happens. I can't, you know, even formulate a theory as to what is going on when someone becomes... But I can be polite to them, you know? I can accept that they probably know more about it than I do. That most of them are just people trying to live their lives and be happy, you know? And I don't just fear for the safety of trans people, but, you know, when this takes hold, when there's this sort of suspicion, if not outright hostility, of, you know, transgenderism generally, it's not just trans people who suffer. You know, it's women who've got sort of a bit of a hairy lip. You know, it's men who've got big floppy moobs. It's anyone who doesn't, you know, sort of dress in a particularly gender appropriate way. And it's just really scary actually, how comment sections on articles, you know, anything that mentions gender in any way, you know, if it uses the word man in it, you know, there's a chance that someone will comment, oh, you can't say man anymore in case it offends some tranny, you know. What is going through people's... I mean, people are just obsessed with it. And even some of the conspiracy theorists are going on that, you know, half the celebrities are transgender because they've looked at photos of them and measured their body, you know, their body measurements and say, well, this woman's got broad shoulders and narrow hips, so she must be transgender, and it's a big conspiracy to turn everybody. What? I mean, I know conspiracy theorists are sort of not representative of the general population, but it's. I mean, these things have become more popular. Since we've all been watching YouTube all day, in lockdown and so on. These people can get their views out and get their ratings up on their YouTube channels and so on. I mean, I don't have my 10,000 followers. I'm a long way off. I worked out it'll take about 200 years at the current rate for me to get my 10,000 followers. So, well, my great grandchildren will be raking it in. But yeah, I'm not earning anything from this. Nothing whatsoever. I'll not go into any sort of diatribe about trans rights because I have a lot of thoughts on that, and it's not really relevant to this. So who did I vote for in the end? I mean, I kind of, as I say, I sort of feel like people like me vote Green, but that's not necessarily a reason enough for me to vote for them as such. And I did sort of vaguely know the candidate, and we had a bit of personal beef a few years ago, so that's I have to choose somehow, so I wrote it off, I did read the manifesto. I like a lot of the things they're coming out with. I'm not crazy about the new leaders, but they seem okay, But anyway, yes, I decided, I would explore other options. Let's say. I did consider briefly the Lib Dems. I mean, they had a nice manifesto. Yeah, they got my approval from that. Their policies were sort of reasonably sound. But let's face it, they got us into this mess in the first place, didn't they? They could have formed coalition with Labour or Tories, and they chose the baddies. I mean, back in 2010, maybe the climate was a bit different, and we didn't know what was going to happen. Who could have imagined that Boris Johnson would be Prime Minister? What? Johnson. So yeah, I changed my mind there. So in the end, I went for the Yorkshire Party. I mean, the Yorkshire Party are very low profile, even round here. A lot of people haven't even heard of them. They're basically the same sort of idea as the SNP or Plaid Cymru. They're a kind of centre-left, pro-devolution, locally centred party. I thought that seemed fine. Yeah, there was nothing to object to in their manifesto. I mean, I didn't sort of study any of the candidates in depth or anything like that. I couldn't write any biographies of any of them, but you can't really tell from what they say, can you? They always sort of big themselves up, but there was nothing hugely, any glaring faults with any of them particularly that I saw. So I thought, well, they'll do. I'll vote for them. So that was what I did. Anyway, the surprises we got. Sinn Féin is now the 5th biggest party in the UK. I mean, they seem generally all right in most ways, you know, but I think the idea that they don't take their seats, I mean, obviously they the history is that they consider the UK to be an occupying force, so they won't take part in the government. Fair enough, whatever. But it kind of feels like, voting for Sinn Féin is voting to have yourself unrepresented. But then it's almost like the none of the above option that some people say we need on voting cards, isn't it? It's the ultimate protest vote. I don't know. I think it's probably a suggestion as well that Irish unity is ticking ever closer. Which I as an English person, I don't really have an opinion on, If the people of Northern Ireland want to be Irish, then so be it. But I do worry that if it happens, anytime soon, in the next couple of decades, whilst the Troubles are still well within living memory, and I am sort of concerned that it'd all kick off again. There's still a lot of Northern Islanders who are, very patriotic British people. And the British identifying faction, still exists and is still, still willing to fight for what they feel they want. For whatever reason, it's there's always a risk that the bombs and guns are going to come out again. Because I mean, we call it the Troubles, don't they? It sounds like it's a bit of a to-do. What happened there? That was a problem. That wasn't very nice. I mean, it was a civil war. Come on, it was a civil war in all but name. Which the two factions didn't have any sort of government to give them that sort of sense of legitimacy, it was a civil war, it went on for a very long time. A lot of people suffered, are still suffering from it, and I think it's best to avoid delving back into that, though. I don't know. Apparently, there have been surveys done saying that more Northern Irish people are now in favour of becoming part of Ireland. They've floated ideas about would we change our flag? Would we change our constitution? It sounds like some serious politicians think it might be a possibility. In fact, I read an article recently. There've been predictions it'll be in the next decade or so. Well, I mean that remains to be seen, doesn't it? It's, I don't have a horse in this race. I'm not patriotic in any way. I don't know anybody in Northern Ireland even. It's something that I personally am just sort of watching as an interested outsider, I suppose. I mean, I was spinning big time on on Northern Ireland and the Troubles a year or so ago. So I've sort of looked at it objectively as a historical event. Which is obviously still playing out. But yes, Sinn Féin are the fifth biggest party in the UK Parliament now. So that's interesting. That's an interesting. That's what I've been trying to say for several minutes now. That is an interesting development. Okay. Plaid Cymru got 4. That's nice. Greens got 4 seats. Cool. We like Greens, as I've said. The SNP have suddenly collapsed. They've sort of halved their popularity, haven't they? I think what was sort of really missed about the election coverage, in the lead up to it was, there were all the reports were focusing on how Labour had this massive lead and the Tory support was collapsing and Reform are doing well, Lib Dems are doing well. It's what surprised me was nobody focused on who's going to be the opposition. I mean, obviously it was a foregone conclusion that Labour were going to win. Keir Starmer would be the next Prime Minister. That had been obvious for months. But who was going to be the opposition? That's what got me. I mean, obviously the Tories were just in free fall. Reform were shooting up in popularity. Lib Dems were predicted, some predictions were saying they could possibly get more seats than the Tories. There were 3 parties that could possibly have done it. I was wondering actually, if there was some sort of equal footing, so say Tories and Lib Dems both got 70 seats, would there then be a coalition opposition? So yeah, that was interesting. And the debate about PR started up again, didn't it? Like, how different it would be if they used proportional representation. There were lots of sort of dire warnings. We mustn't use PR or Reform would have been the 3rd biggest party. Yeah, but if we'd have had PR, in 2017, Jeremy Corbyn would be Prime Minister. The world would be a much better place. I think as well, it's democracy, isn't it? I mean, whether you like a particular party or not, you yourself are just one person. And if the majority of people in the country are going to vote for somebody you dislike, that's not, clearly, that's what the majority of people want. Your one voice against so many million is not going to drown anyone out. I mean, it's a complicated debate, isn't it? I mean, people I disagree with would be in power is not a reason to completely dismantle the democratic system. But then what if the minority are correct? What if the majority wants something that is detrimental to themselves? It's happened. It's happened. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm in any way unhappy about the result. I think it's overall positive. Yeah, there are some individuals I'm glad to see in the House of Commons, you know. Some people I'm glad to see rid of. Actually, that was something that surprised me. Penny Mordaunt lost a seat, didn't she? So I just thought she was like the kind of natural successor as leader of the Tories, but obviously she's not now. So who's it going to be? That's the next big story. And then all the press is saying, oh, the Tories are in the wilderness. We are going to have a decade of Labour. That's what they were saying about Labour 5 years ago, wasn't it? We live in a very different world to the one we lived in 2019. You know, everything has irrevocably changed. We all spend a lot more time watching YouTube. I'm going to leave it there. I feel like the world is, well, certainly this country is going to improve somewhat, though not as much as it could have done, in short. If the 2017 and 2019 elections had gone differently, you know. Right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you in the next one.